Welcome to the Blooming League of Original Podcasts.
G'day and welcome to an extra rugged edition of Thrash and Treasure, the Torture Chamber musical comedy podcast where Alphabet disguises herself as a cactus so nobody will throw water on her. And speaking of disguises, this guy says, I'm Aaron, and I says, I'm joined as usual by the all-singing, all-dancing international man of mystery, because he's Matt the Quizmaster. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going? I'm coming to you from Mackay, Queensland today.
Yep.
It's always a mystery where I'm going to be.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, I love that. I love a guessing game. You should just drop me hints every now and then. Anyways, guess what?
What?
We have another legendary Aussie diva in the lab today, and after already meeting a sticky fate from one Red Queen, we hope this time he's better prepared for our Resident Evil, because this cool captain has cruised across cameras and curtains in a career that can only be called criminally crazy, thus causing the Crownies to catch this kid in court for incarceration with the tough nuts and bad girls over a bit of daylight robbery and everything in between. But between the pages lies a daringly dashing dude whose career reads more like a Joan Collins novel as the dream lover Noddy goes to Toyland to gift the newlyweds Mac and Mabel with an aspects of love, but on the way meets Dr. Zhivago, his former lover when they were neighbours. With a skip of his heartbeat, he whispers, "Kiss me, Kate," as the grand doc lets down her long beautiful hair. It causes the fantastics to rise like a phoenix, mile high till it makes the guys and dolls shout, "Mamma mia!" Dear world, oh what a night, leaving this dream team scarlet-faced, hip bones sticking out. They sure ate the play. But what a shock and shame, they lay miserable, waiting for enough sweet charity donations so the RFDS can transport them, dead or alive, to casualty. A place to call home while they recover with help from today's chosen nursicle. So like the man from Snowy River, let's round up this West Side Story as we whip out the chess pieces and crack a huge dream-coated g'day to our Technicolor pal Joey from the South Pacific, who will prove he's the Wizard of Oz by bringing an afterlife to the apocalypse caused by those assassins, Barnum Jekyll and Hyde Patrick. Evil awakens the Phantom of the Opera, but we've already awakened the Resident Evil, so before I repeat a pun, please help me welcome to the Torture Chamber this absolutely astonishing artiste, this all-round awesome Aussie and British co-production. Before he hears the drums Fernando and cruises off to Greece, please drum up a round of applause for the mayor of Rock and Roll City, the one and only Mr. Martin Cruz. Yay, welcome to the Torture Chamber. How's it going?
Outstanding. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much. You're lucky I didn't get that mixed up.
Well, congratulations getting through that in obviously more than one breath, but I've been waiting with bated breath to hear that. It didn't disappoint. Thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. I did warn you.
Yes.
You think you know someone, and then you hear that
Yes.
introduction. You're like, oh, I didn't know that. Yes.
You think you know yourself.
What a shock and shame, huh? Interesting.
Oh, yeah. That was a cracker.
But anyway, so I couldn't have done that without you having done that, which all those titles work so well for an erotic novel, I have to admit.
Yes.
That's not in my head. That was all there. I looked at it. I'm like, holy crap. And I could have gone further with it and kinkier with it, but I didn't.
You're right. If I ever decide on a career change.
Well, that's it. So, but anyway, so I'm absolutely rapt for you joining us because, well, a lot of fanboys out there, probably a lot of metalheads have seen the original Resident Evil movie, which is, still today. It sparked off this huge franchise that just went on and on and on.
I know.
And now has been rebooted 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
But the first and last time I saw you was in Hair at Hamer Hall.
Ah, wow.
And you're about this big.
You're right. Yes, right. Yeah, you were up in the Grand Suite.
I hope you're referring to his height because you were.
Yeah.
Totally. Because I said to myself, I go, no, I'm not. We won't bring up that scene because that's just an awkward thing. And then I'm like thinking about where we were sitting and how the whole cast was about an inch high because it's Hamer Hall.
Yeah, you're right at the back, obviously.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to start off on the wrong foot like that. Thank you for calling me out on that.
Well, that's all right because I was the only one who didn't take my clothes off. So,
well, that's fine. Yeah, you were Claude.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes, and you didn't do the tour. Now I saw the tour as well.
Mm-hmm. That was with Kane Alexander.
Yes, that's right. Yes, and I know Claude is the one who doesn't. So that sort of thought, well, there's no point in bringing it up, anyways. But
I will say that in rehearsal, when the time came for everyone to nude up for the first time, I decided to join in because, as part of the tribe.
Solidarity.
I don't know if you remember, we had an inner tribe and an outer tribe because we had about 150 people in the tribe, but the outer tribe was made up of
VCA students.
Dance school, and students. And so the inner tribe, who was sort of the principal cast, they left us all alone on stage at Hamer Hall, and we all stripped off and we all went running naked through the auditorium, which was quite an incredible experience, and one for the memory banks because you're in this, was it like a 2,000 seat auditorium, stark bollock naked, running around and screaming and giggling.
Yes, that's going on my bucket list now. Thank you very much.
Right, there you go. Yeah, well, make sure you choose your timing because otherwise you'll get arrested.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, so if anyone's listening that works at the Arts Centre in Melbourne at Hamer Hall, you can find our email online, hit me up, and no cameras, just let me do it for fun. Anyways, you know what I actually thought, though, at the time, it should have been done across the road in the gardens, and that would have just been spectacular to have done hair in the actual gardens.
Yes.
The way they'd done it was all the students were sort of up in the aisles and stuff like that, just all waving around ribbons every now and then.
It was a production company show.
Yes.
And normally they were in the State Theatre. I can't remember why they were in Hamer Hall this time. As you said, it toured the next year because it sold out immediately. We only did 6 performances or something, but it completely sold out. So they decided to mount it as their first full proper show and toured. I think it did Melbourne and Sydney.
In my punk days. So I think it was in that respect, it was a little bit, even just at Sydney Myer Music Bowl.
Yeah.
It just would have had that real hippie outdoor feeling. They could have had a real bonfire or something like that going to add to the atmosphere. I don't know, mate. And I've seen a few productions of Hair and what they've done with it, and it's all pretty much been the same thing. You've got the band on stage, you've got an American flag backdrop, and you've got the peace sign. I'm sort of a little bit fatigued.
Right.
But yes, anyways, we're going to move on. Speaking of rock, we'll move on to the metal. Now, firstly, what would be in your ultimate over-the-top rock star rider if you could put anything on there?
Make it outrageous.
Yeah, maybe 100 virgins. I don't know, serving bonbons, like naked. I don't know.
What sort of bonbons? Come on, get specific here.
I've heard of some of the things that have been in riders, and they've absolutely blown my mind. But of course, back in the day, they used to just make up things because they knew that they could get them.
Well, that's what we want. We want craziness.
Yeah, private jet, maybe.
Yes, that's what we are talking about.
Yes, we like this. Yes. And are the virgins going to arrive on the private jet with you, or?
Yeah. They should be the hostesses and the flight crew. In fact, I shouldn't be sexist. We have some male virgins as well.
Excellent. All inclusive.
Yes, I was going to round it off with saying, and in this PC times, they will be male, female, and non-binary virgins, of course.
And non-binary, absolutely.
Yes.
As long as they identify as virgins, because
That's right. Yes.
Self-identify as virgins. Sorry, I'm sorry. I have to stop us here. I saw something the other day that somebody wrote that this person self-identifies as poor. What? Anyone can self-identify as poor. Either you are or you're not. There's no fucking self-identifying about it. Sorry, but that just blew my mind. I'm like, what? Okay, either they are struggling or they're not.
No, absolutely.
There's no looking in the mirror going, I identify as poor. You would know it, man. You would know it. You'd see it in your face because your face would be so depressed and sunken every day. Anyways, I'm talking about myself there. Let's move on very, very, very quickly. Have you had any experience with metal, heavy metal, glam metal, thrash metal?
Not a whole heap. The closest I sort of got was I was into Kiss for a little bit.
Yep.
Well, and of course Led Zeppelin.
Well, yeah, of course, without saying.
Yeah, that's a given. Not that they're heavy metal, but I was a huge Cold Chisel fan through my teens. But I never listened to Black Sabbath or anything like that. But it was interesting when I listened to the album how it reminded me of bands like Jethro Tull. Obviously different instruments, but some of the musical structure, some of it's relatively complex, though, and the way that it would shift from sort of one tune all of a sudden break into something completely different. But I never really got into the full-on heavy metal scene.
Anyways, well, I've reviewed the album this week because we did Black Sabbath. I thought we had done Black Sabbath before now. I know we've definitely done Ozzy Osbourne, his solo work, but apparently we had never done Black Sabbath in our 87 something episodes.
Like, I'm such a musical theater guy. I was like, what? Ozzy Osbourne's in Black Sabbath? Oh, interesting. Piece of trivia for, those of you out there who are as clueless as me.
I've talked about it when we did Ozzy Osbourne. The only Ozzy Osbourne song I knew was the theme song of the Osbournes reality show, which they turned into a jazz song.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I couldn't tell you any time I'd heard any of these. Ozzy Osbourne's voice, I could never have told you if I'd heard that in a movie, which apparently I had heard it in a movie. It was news to me. Anyway, so before we discuss it, I'm going to quickly run through this review. Upon deciding to cover Black Sabbath, it was a totally random pick and really only went with this album because of the brilliant artwork, and Sabotage because I'm self-destructive. So the words spoke to me. But would the album, or would it leave a hole in this sky? So I loaded up the Spotify jukebox for track 1, Hole in the Sky. Oh wait, I just did that one. So I bopped my head along and bopped the skip button to find out I shouldn't have. Don't start, too late, I already did. But this 49-second instrumental should be the overture with that title. But as the grugger guitar kicks in on Symptom of the Universe, which I can already tell you is social media, here we have an angry 6.5-hour song that never outstays its welcome by delivering a track that somehow slows down to a bongo-driven groove that fits and works. All it needs is a Caucasian 60-year-old in a Hawaiian shirt. Megalomania really spoke to me, but the week-long runtime did not. 9 minutes? What is it with megalomaniacs talking too much? I'm asking for a friend. I'm kidding. Nobody believes I have friends. But I do believe this song takes us on another journey, much like listening to me. Sorry, megalomaniacs talk for 9 minutes. I didn't notice until this point that it's a long album with only 8 tracks, with much of the album's individual tracks going through all sorts of motions whilst never clashing with each other. It feels angry, yes, often indecisive, and yet, that's the thrill of it all. Super Tsar started, and again, I felt seen, but not heard with this second jam track, so I'll write my own lyrics. Am I going insane? Yes, because I kind of dug this album. It's rock and roll, bit thrashy, bit proto-punk. Vocals could use some depth, but otherwise, this mole gives a 4 stars. Kind of really dug this. This was odd. It was an obscure album. It went so many places within each track, and then you'd have like a 9-minute track and a 49-second track and an 8-minute track and a 3-minute track. But listening to it on repeat, it never felt like that.
Yes, right.
Which was odd because I torture myself with these albums. I listen to them on repeat over and over and over again for hours and days on end. So
I think on the vinyl, there's 4 tracks on each side. So, I mean, that's quite interesting as well. You see, would have had to flip it halfway through.
Yeah.
And would they be even?
Not really sure. Lots of space, on the vinyl in the middle, there would be lots of space either on the outside or the inside.
I wondered when it started, because I had no pre-knowledge of it at all, and I wondered whether it was going to follow some kind of theme or concept, and I fairly quickly decided that it wasn't. But then, as I say, that's sort of what reminded me of, Jethro Tull, of these exploration of different styles of music, different rhythms. And I was also thinking if you swapped out the instruments, if you didn't have grunge guitar, if you put in flute or, more of the instruments that Jethro Tull favoured, then it was very kind of orchestral, in its sort of scope.
It was. And a lot of these albums that we've done, especially from that period, do kind of read like concept albums, whether intentional, whether it's just the influence of bands like Pink Floyd and The Who and Pink Floyd and The Who. I know those two. But yeah, I kind of really dug this. It was picked at random. I didn't realize that there was a whole story behind it because it's angry deliberately.
Right.
There's lots of good stories behind it.
Yeah, well, according to Wikipedia, so this could all be wrong and speculative, and we are only relaying what the monkeys with keyboards wrote, so do not sue us, please. There was lawyers in the studio at the time, and so they were in the middle of recording and signing all this stuff, arguments and stuff with the record company. So it reflected in the music, and I love that. That's why I like Kelly Clarkson's Angrier music era ago. I'm bringing up Kelly Clarkson again. I can hear the audience out there groaning, but I don't care. Her angry music I love because
Yeah.
her passion's in there. You can feel that emotion coming through.
A lot of people say, what you know, again, like from what I've read on the internet, a lot of people sort of look to this album as sort of like a defining thrash metal album because of the emotion that's on it, because of the anger, because of course it's called Sabotage. Yeah, well, this is what I've read on the internet, so it may or may not be true. But of course, the title Sabotage was because they were in this fight with their manager. And so they felt, you know, that they were being sabotaged into making an album. And so Ozzy Osbourne said that he was writing all these angry lyrics. And, you know, obviously that relationship was very much affecting the content of the album.
Right.
I think artistically to its benefit, honestly.
Yeah. That's not to say record executives out there go push it around your artists for crying out loud. And also even in the photo shoot and on the cover, like I did comment on the quote unquote brilliant cover art. That was a bit of shade I was throwing because it's called the worst rock album cover of all time. They were told to come along to a test shoot. They didn't know it was going to be the actual photo shoot. The designers didn't have their costumes, which are supposed to all be in black. One of them's in his wife's red stockings, but there's all sorts of stories we could unpack there that I really do want to know just for the juicy goss. And they found it at the time. This is the photo shoot. So they were promised that we're going to fix it up. It's going to look great. And it's considered the worst album cover. But when you think about it, it's sort of reflective then of the anger and what they were going through behind the scenes to make this album, because they got screwed over in that as well.
Yeah.
And it shows. So you can judge a book by its cover.
Did they part ways with their manager after this, or?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think that they were actually possibly even broken up with the manager at that point, which is why there were lawyers around during the thing to sort of like, you know, transition their way out of it. But I'm not exactly sure. We'll have to do some research on that one.
Yeah. The listeners at home, go to your laptops after this episode and look for yourselves.
Let us know on the Twitter.
As we say, it shows in this, but even those softer moments or where it slows down didn't stick out like I thought they did on Ziggy Stardust. Or it doesn't have a jarring quality to it. And I didn't find this did either. There was no jarring quality. It worked. It worked really, really well. So yeah. Now, what would you give it out of 5?
Well, qualifying my mark with my confession that I am not a heavy metal aficionado, so it's an uneducated mark. I'd sort of play it safe and give it a 3. I did enjoy listening to it. I was impressed with some of the musicality. I sort of agree with all of the things that you're saying about it, but then at the same time, I didn't sort of come away going, wow, I'm going to listen to more of that. I had a healthy respect for what they achieved, but not necessarily my cup of tea.
So no standout tunes or no bangers for you on this one?
It was more, as I said, once I sort of got about 3-4 tracks in, it was on sort of, it took me on such a retrospective journey right from the beginning. I thought about Kiss, and I thought about Jethro Tull, and I thought about, in fact, I thought about Hair, funnily enough.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, some of the musical motifs, I thought, yeah, I can kind of almost see, you know, where similar time period, really, I think, isn't it? What year was Sabotage?
75, I think.
75, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
In around that sort of early 70s era. And so it's not that it sort of washed over me and had no effect. I was sort of suddenly awash with all of these kind of memories and fond memories of other stuff that I'd listened to, and also made me think that if I'd come across this when I was a teenager, then it might be a very different story. I might have pursued it a bit more in depth, but yeah, I don't know why it never came up for me, but it didn't.
Because you had good influences in your life, not those giving you devil music. That's why.
If you were a troubled teen, Martin, you would have just been sitting in your room, you know, all the lights down, listening to this on repeat,
Yes.
flipping that record over, flipping that record over. That's what we used to do back in the day, young people, is we used to just sit in our rooms and listen to our record players over and over again.
Yeah.
Records on a record player.
Yeah, Matt, what did you think of this?
Again, it was very surprising for me. I thought, you know, because we're called Thrash and Treasure, I was expecting like some really heavy, you know, sort of guitars and stuff. And it was much more gentle in terms of musicality, like in terms of, you know, because we had listened to Kings of Metal by Manowar last week, and which was very guitar heavy and very like, you know, very, it's a later era. So I was a bit surprised by this. And I agree with Martin. Like it was this real sort of nostalgia trip trip and very sort of dreamy in an interesting way. And and there's like that soaring vocals at the one point. There's this sort of, almost operatic sort of section. I was like, oh, this is not at all what I expected. Yeah, so I mean, I was very surprised by it. But again, like I said, I'm always looking for the hit singles, and I didn't find a hit single on this one. So
well, yeah, there wasn't really. Am I going insane? In parentheses, radio. I think that's to hint that that's the one that's for the radio. That I think charted, but not very high, if I remember correctly.
It's always good to look at a band's journey as well, though. I think this is their sixth album or something, and there's so many rumors about the recording and the relationship with the manager and the lawyers in the room. And there's also a rumor that Led Zeppelin popped in and jammed with them, but it might have been the album before this. Like there's all this sort of mythology around this time in recording and what it was. And even like I love the album cover is like hilarious, and the story behind the album cover, I guess it was the drummers of Drum Tech or whatever, was like, oh, I'm a graphic designer, and so it's just this experimentation that is happening there is really exciting. So it's a really fun album in terms of that. Is it defies expectations.
Yeah, because it looks like the saboteur was Callie all along. So we're going to go to an ad break. And Jack, call me. G'day, listeners. Aaron here. We thought we better send a spy to Broadway to check out the shows for us. So here for today's review is our Broadway spy, Spencer.
This week we're talking about Parade. Parade is a 1998 musical written by Jason Robert Brown and Alfred Urey, and co-conceived by Harold Prince. This show is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. I saw it at City Center. I had never heard anything about it or knew anything about it, and this show is incredibly moving, with a cast consisting of Michaela Diamond and Ben Platt as the Franks, and countless others, including off-Broadway favorite Eddie Cooper and personal favorite of mine, Sean Allen Krill, in other roles in the production. It is just a beautiful production with a wonderful score, with these beautiful orchestrations, with this large orchestra. It's a very minimalist production with direction by Michael Arden. It's just one of the most amazing things I've ever seen on a stage. Now, is this show for tourists or purists? This show is a show for purists. I don't think it's necessarily a show that tourists should go see, but it is an important show. It's a special show. There were neo-Nazis protesting outside the theater on the first preview. That's when you know that the show that you're creating is something that's needed in this world. Go see Parade until August 6th at the Bernard B. Jacobs Theater.
Anyways, we're back with Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, that's Quizmaster Matt, and we're joined by the magnificent Martin Cruz.
Woohoo!
Now, you've just done Phantom of the Opera on Sydney Harbour, I believe.
Yes.
Did my ticket get lost in the mail?
Must have.
Bloody hell.
Unless it got washed away.
Lots of rain, I hear.
Yeah. When they were building the set, they had to dredge 16 tons of mud out of the site.
Oh, shit.
Because, of course, it's the location is Mrs. Macquarie's Chair, which is an embankment, basically, that looks across to the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. And all of this mud just ran down the hill and sort of gathered against the harbour wall there. And so while they're trying to build this scaffolding in this enormous staircase, they're actually having to bring the bulldozers in and get all this mud out of the place.
Now, see, that's when you want to do hair in the park.
That was... When you were talking about that, it was one of my thoughts was, what do you do in the inclement weather?
So I saw videos, on the social medias of people like holding onto set pieces in just the pouring rain.
Yeah.
Was that an often sort of thing?
That thankfully, no. The first two previews were fairly torrential. When I say the first two, the only two previews were torrential. And then by some miracle, the opening night, I couldn't have been more divine. The clouds parted and temperate conditions until about a half an hour after the show finished, when Lord Andrew Lloyd Webber was spinning the discs in the after party and got absolutely drenched. The skies opened up then.
That's something I never thought I'd hear. Andrew Lloyd Webber was spinning the discs in the after party.
Yeah. No, it's his new thing. He's a DJ now.
He did that when Phantom reopened on Broadway.
Yeah.
Afterwards, they had a street party.
That's right.
There's video of that online.
Yeah.
The
footage that you've probably seen was really the first performance where it was torrential like that. And that footage was taken about a minute and a half before we stopped the show. And the reason we stopped it was because the orchestra pit flooded. The only reason that the onstage action stops is lightning.
Wow.
It's, 10 minutes before the end of the show, and a lot of us were actually out in that, on the top of the staircase. It's just a bizarre experience. And kudos to Josh Robson and Georgina Hobson for how they just carried on singing. I mean, you've got a mouth full of water. Georgina was saying that the water was hitting the table with such force that it was then bouncing up into her eyes. And it's certainly this stage of my career, sort of 30 odd years into my career, to have a first time experience of something. It's quite unique. And I have to say, with that production, there were more than one first time experiences. It was just incredible.
There's a theater in the States, and I forget which one it is. I don't think it's Aero Lyceum, but it's one of these outdoor theaters, and it's near a flight path, and there's actually like green light, yellow light, red light. And so the warning light will come on, and then there'll be a red light, and the orchestra will stop, and the actors will stop, and they're in freeze. Then the plane will go over, and then it will go back to green light, and they'll continue the show.
Wow.
They do musicals like this. I forget where it is. Anyway, we'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
I need to know that one of our other hosts, Jonathan, Mr. J-Wags, will be coming up in an outdoor summer stock repertory 3 productions, and he'll be playing Willy Wonka in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I think I'm allowed to announce that. I don't know if I've broken the embargo, then whoops, daisies, I didn't mean to do that. Anyways, we're going to move on to the musical now, because we'll continue on with Andrew Lloyd Webber. As we say, he's had a bit of a rough week. So us at Thrash and Treasure, we send our love to Andrew Lloyd Webber and his family, and also to David Zippel, obviously friend of the show, who has been on this show twice. What the fuck is going on in my life? I have no idea. But anyways, now before we get on to that, I would like both of you gentlemen to join me in a campaign to Disney. Do you agree it is about time that David Zippel was made a Disney legend?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
He wrote Reflection, people.
Yes.
Hercules, bless my soul. But Reflection has been done on every single Idol, X Factor, The Voice around the world. That goodness gracious me. He deserves it for that one song. It has inspired how many little girls are dead. No disrespect to Matthew Wilder.
Oh, was it?
I didn't mean to break his stride.
Ha ha.
I will punish myself later with 50 Hail Marys. Matt, do you agree it is about time?
It's about time, definitely. Yes. I mean, Hercules, come on. You can't say bless my soul without everybody yelling the response.
Hashtag badass Zipperella. Anyway, so yes, we're going to move on to the musical, The Woman in White. Now, I didn't know it, and neither did Matt. So you have reviewed it this week. And obviously, I would be absolutely biased. Matt, you have never interviewed David, so...
Well, no, I have not, but I do have a long history of loving Andrew Lloyd Webber's music from that Phantom album that I used to play really, really loud when I was, I don't know, about a 10-year-old, and my sister would be so mad because there's all these screams like, she's like, what is going on? Turn down the record player. So, I mean, I honestly like this. I love this album. I love this cast recording. It's like from the very beginning of that prologue, it just sets the scene. Like, I guess I'm a bit of a fan of sort of gothic sort of horror as well. And I just think the pacing of this is so exciting because it really just holds tension. It was so spooky. The opening number fulfills the brief. You know what I mean? If it's going to be a creepy show, you can't get more creepy than the opening number, and the storytelling in it, and the sort of sparseness of the music and all the hello, just really awesome. And again, I always talk about this, my friends about Lloyd Webber, and so there's this one sort of motif that goes on and on and on in all the shows, and some of them sound like others. And so I mean, there's certainly a feeling of Cats and Phantom, and even Love Never Dies. I mean, even right from the very beginning in the prologue. But that's assuming that all of his work as well. You know what I mean? So and I think maybe people do much more than they realize. And then, of course, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but the ghost in the opening, I was like, oh my gosh, it sounds just like Sharon Millichip, which I thought was just interesting. And we'll talk about, the Australians that have been associated with this production, towards the end of the review.
Yeah.
So, I mean, now, we're into perspective. We're still holding the tension. She looked so much like you, all these sort of, it's a ghost story. based on a novella, so it's not really like a children's story, but I mean, they're giving all these really clear story points along the way, but also just really holding the tension. And then, I mean, we got to Trying Not to Notice, and it's sort of the all I ask of you of the show. And so I was like swept up in the romance again. And then they hit us with I Believe My Heart, and that is a banger. I love that song. I mean, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we come in with that song, which is just amazing. Because again, like I hadn't like maybe it was in the back of my mind, and I knew this that All for Laura, that sort of theme. And then I was like, oh, there's this song. Yes, I love this song. And of course, then we get the townspeople coming in, to shift the mood. Which again, like when I'm talking about the pacing, like it's this broody. There's some flirting, there's some humor, there's some unrequited love, and then we get those townspeople to just keep coming in and keeping the show moving along. We get to Gifts for Living Well, and okay, and now more questions and accusations are sort of being laid into this now. So in terms of the storytelling, like we're getting layered with more information as we go along. And then of course here we come to All for Laura, which is another banger. I just love the song. It's so haunting. There's something to say about a repetitive melody, and I mean I think Angela Lloyd Webber does that really well. Yeah, I mean I was so into that. And then we get to this beautiful ghost, and I was like, oh my goodness, this sounds like that Taylor Swift song from Cats. You know what I mean? Like again, like if you love Angela Lloyd Webber, you are going to love this album. Now we're into Act 2, and of course the baddies. I can't remember anybody's name of the baddies. I just remember those,
Count Fosco.
Percival Glyde.
Yeah. And they come back in, and there's more rumors and accusations. Now we're starting to find out who the villains are. Again, it's really well painted when someone becomes a villain. You know what I mean? Like you might not have realized what's going on, but then it's in that typical Gothic sort of way. You just there's no doubt about who our villains are. And of course, tragedy strikes. And then we get back to the chorus with Lost Souls. We're into the seduction. There's more of this mystery happening here. And this brought me to Mystery of Edwin Drood. And then I was like, oh, well, I guess it is sort of based on The Signalman, which is a Dickens short story as well. I mean, it's partially based on a lot of things. So I was very excited about that. And then, of course, we get to the Asylum. And this is where I can't talk much more about it because I don't want to ruin story points for people. But the plot twists ensue. Let's just put it that way. We learn a lot by this point, and basically it's just a rollicking ghost story. Like the rest of it, you just have to hear it to believe it. It's a pretty long album, but again, it's one of those that like I would have totally just been sitting in my bedroom, just like sitting there in quiet, listening to every single detail and really being caught up in the story. I mean, I absolutely loved it. I'm so excited by it. It reminded me of some of my favorite things. I guess I really love Gothic things. So I mean, even there's like it has a sort of secret garden sort of feel to it. I mean, I was thinking of Passion, sometimes Passion at times. Yeah, so I'm very biased. It is my sort of musical, and I am giving it 4 out of 5.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Well, plot twist, Anne Hathaway did the workshop. What?
Yes.
Of all the people, that's so random. Anyway, sorry.
I was like, surely it must be another Anne Hathaway, not that famous actor, but
no, it was her.
Seems like it was.
No, it wasn't Shakespeare's wife. Yeah, you're right. This is very haunting. It's not just a sort of ghost story. The novel was sort of the first mystery / detective novel that really sort of set the standard for sort of clues that you'll get, the story to all the narrative plot points that was told from different points of view as well. And I think that was one of the first times that was done, especially in a mystery novel. So not having read the novel, I can't tell you if then that's reflected in the musical. Maybe Martin, you may know.
So on the first day of rehearsal, Trevor Nunn gave us a sort of an introductory lecture, and he talked all about how down through the ages, the popular voices of the day were drawn to the popular medium, which is why Shakespeare was a playwright, because the playhouse was where everybody went, not only for entertainment, but to get current affairs and find out what was going on and blah, blah, blah. And, for a sort of period of 100 years or so after Shakespeare, there weren't any really significant playwrights because things moved into the novel. It was written as a serial, which appeared in Charles Dickens' magazine, which was called All Year Round, I think. And I believe it was a weekly. And the first installment of The Woman in White appeared in the same issue as the last installment of Tale of Two Cities. And The Woman in White was by far the most most successful story that had been published, more successful than anything that Dickens had written. And it was so embraced by the masses that on the day the final installment came out in the magazine, the British Parliament agreed not to sit because they knew that no one would turn up, because everybody wanted to find out what happened with Laura and Walter and everyone.
Wow.
And yeah, Wilkie Collins was far more successful in that regard than Charles Dickens. Unfortunately, the opium got the better of him eventually. He only wrote one other novel of significance, The Moonstone, I think it was called, and then he kind of succumbed to the drugs. And so the way that the novel is set out, it begins with an account in the first person written by Walter Hartwright, the school teacher, who talks about in the first person how he got this job to be a tutor for these girls at Limmeridge House in the English countryside. And the night before he departed, he bumped into this woman in white on the high road. And then he goes to Limmeridge, meets all of the people, talks all about Fosco, Percival Glyde, and then he is banished at the end of the first section of the book. And then the middle of the book is made up of accounts by the housekeeper, who have all done this at Walter's request, because he's put, as he says in the beginning, I've put this together as almost a legal document to prove our argument kind of thing, to recount the events that happened. And then Marion, she gives an account and blah, blah, blah. This is where it differs with the show in a way. The whole thing is then bookended by Walter. Marion goes looking for Walter and finds him, and then he takes up the narrative again through to the end. And in the show, Marion still goes to look for Walter and finds Walter, but then she kind of is the driving force in terms of getting revenge.
Drives the story, yeah.
Yeah, so very much, as you said, the Charles Dickens short story, The Signalman, is where that bit at the beginning, the hello, below there.
Yeah.
That sort of Benjamin Britten type scene Andrew used, again, to bookend, because it finishes at the train station as well. The show was all done with graphics.
Yeah. The set design was quite unique for the time.
Yeah, the set was just blank, and so everything was projected. And so at the climax of the pursuit of the baddies, there's this train tunnel, and the image would sort of shift to the side and the train would sort of come diagonally across the stage. And it was this sort of big climactic moment of the show. And then all of a sudden, Andrew Lloyd Webber, getting cold feet as we were approaching opening, suddenly went, I have a train in Starlight Express, I have a train in Whistle Down the Wind, they're going to accuse me of always having trains. And so he said, I want to cut the train. And we had this week where Trevor said, we just have to understand, what it's like in the creative process and blah, blah, blah. He said, we will have a train. We just have to bide our time. And sure enough, the train came back in. It was quite spectacular, the effect.
It sounds so exciting. And, again, because for that time, nothing had been done like it before. And it would have just added that real spookiness as well. You know what I mean? That sort of, was it sort of a curved sort of projection surface or?
Yeah, so essentially, if you think of the stage being like a half cylinder, we had a revolve and then a back wall that went sort of around the back half of the stage. And within that wall, there was a section that came out and would come onto the revolve and could turn around. And then also for the beginning of the show, the two side walls could come completely to the front, so that when you came into the theatre, you were looking at sort of the front of the cylinder with, I can't remember what was projected on it. And then those two walls opened up at the beginning to find Walter, me, standing alone on a railway track. And then so the various different positions that this smaller screen could go into, it would sort of go halfway round and it would have a hedge projected on it. So it would be in the gardens. But it also had a door in the middle of it. It was very versatile. Unfortunately, quite prone to breaking down. We had a few contingency options for if the screen didn't work, but then if the revolve didn't work, and then if nothing worked, the projections, they still worked to a degree, but you didn't get the full effect. No one had ever seen anything like it before. And in fact, on the first day of rehearsal, which is the scene, it's Walter on his own meeting the signal. And Trevor he kept saying, because he hadn't shown us the model yet, because the designer was in New York or something. So he was coming on day 2 or 3 of rehearsal. And so he kept saying, if we were making the movie of this show, how would you scramble down the embankment? And I'd be thinking, yeah, but we're not making the movie. Yeah, but if we were, what would you do? And then finally, a day or two in, and he showed us the model, and it all became clear that we were sort of making the movie in a way.
You've just reminded me of Diana from A Chorus Line, where she feels nothing while everyone's going down the hill and they feel the
Yes,
cold
that's
and I
right.
feel the snow and she feels nothing.
Yeah.
At this point where you were like, wait a minute, what have I got myself into?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what is this pantomime I'm in?
Yeah, with this dissonant music.
Also, Lammas is the sort of the start of the harvest.
That's right.
Lammas is on August 1st. It's a Christian or Catholic or whichever one of these religious events, if you will. So Lammas is on August 1st, but Lammastide is where they plant the harvest for the wheat to then make the lammas bread. But every time that song came on, I just wanted to dance naked and sacrifice a goat. But I never would, because I wouldn't hurt a poor goat. So I just danced naked. Anyways, let's move on very, very quickly. So when I first listened to this show, and I'd heard this when it first came out, really, and I sort of thought I had the same expectations. This is totally on me. I'm going to go on a little bit of rant here. I apologize in advance, Martin. The media, audiences, podcasters, even performers, actors, when someone does something and does something really, really well, we expect them to replicate it and replicate it again and replicate it again. Now, Andrew Lloyd Webber had these massive, massive hits, so many of them in a row. And then we got to a point in the 90s where we expected his next show to sound like his last show or his most popular show. And when it came to this coming out, I think where it suffered was our fault for having that expectation that, oh, Andrew Lloyd Webber's doing another gothic horror musical. It's going to be another Phantom. And so we went in expecting that. That onus is on us. We can't do that to artists anymore, people. We have to let them follow their instincts. If Andrew's sitting there saying, well, they're going to accuse me of having another train in it, he's not following his instincts there, but he's thinking about those reactions. He's thinking about those expectations from us. That's not fair on any artist. We've got to stop that shit. So that's sort of one thing I was thinking about a lot. So I sort of come to that conclusion that that's our fault. Just because, Wes Craven does another horror movie, we can't expect it to be A Nightmare Before Christmas again. Because remember, he comes out then with The People Under the Stairs, and it is just as brilliant as Nightmare Before Christmas. Nightmare Before Christmas, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nightmare Before Christmas. I was like, wait a minute.
Completely wrong filmmaker. Goodness gracious me. There's another filmmaker who has his style.
We're just going to let you keep going, make this mistake over, and then tell you at the end.
Tim Burton's a great example there because he keeps trying to live up to those expectations that we have set onto him. It's when he fucks off our expectations that he keeps succeeding. Who was I talking about? Wes Craven, yet come out with The People Under the Stairs, and then a couple of years later, New Nightmare, brilliant. Scream, brilliant. Because he didn't follow our expectations. He just went with what he wanted to make there. And of course, obviously, there's the whole meta thing that was going on there. So I think he was sort of sticking it to our expectations a little bit there. Great. Do that, artist, more. Stick it to our expectations because then you're going to flourish. And that's what happened for the first half or the first quarter or whatever, however long of Andrew Lloyd Webber's career, that those expectations he fobbed off. And he gave us Evita, he gave us Phantom, he gave us Cats. Even Starlight Express, you can laugh at all you like, people at home. It has had this massive life around the world in Germany. And just because it's not America or London, who cares? That's a 30-year running show or something, or however long it's been running. That is a success, however you want to paint it. So anyway, sorry, I did warn you guys at the start of that. You could have told me to shut up at any moment. So I'm sorry,
No,
it's clock sticking.
No, I'm all for that. But Martin, there was sort of like 2.0 version of the show as well, wasn't there, during the run?
Yeah.
Well, during the time that I was in. So I originated it and did 12 months from start of rehearsal. And then another Australian, Damien Humbly, took over from me. And towards the end of my tenure, we did some work with Andrew to fine-tune a couple of things that changed, I believe, my heart slightly. I can't remember the specifics of that. But essentially, it was the same show with just a couple of tweaks. Because I think the music from the show is beautiful.
Yes, I agree.
I Believe My Heart and Walter's 11 o'clock number, Evermore Without You. And this is only my personal opinion. And it's only because I've been doing a lot of writing in the last sort of decade and studying story structure and that sort of thing. I think that as soon as you mess with the symmetry of a story, the hero's journey type nature of an arch plot story with a protagonist, you're asking for trouble because because you're kind of messing with the audience's subconscious expectations. As I said, the show follows the novel till the point that Marion finds Walter again, and then you miss out on that bookend. I think because it had all the hallmarks, it was, a new Andrew Lloyd Webber show with a great score, David Zippel writing the lyrics, directed by Trevor Nunn at the Palace Theatre. It was the first show in after Les Mis. Andrew finally got his theatre back after 15 years or whatever it was. And that was the other thing about the cast recording, is that it's live, which he'd long had this dream of, is that basically he's got a recording studio on about the 4th floor of the Palace Theatre. And so the sound desk just went straight up to the recording studio and they recorded the album live.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty well all of my stuff is live. Michael Crawford then went in and laid down his tracks again.
Because he's Michael Crawford, that's why.
Yes, that's right, yeah. But that's why you hear a lot of scuffling and like when we have the fight, there's lots of...
I love that, though.
Yes, I wondered about that. And there was one moment where, and there were so many people talking, I actually pictured you guys in the studio with your books in front of you, with all these different noises and onomatopoeia written on the thing. I can't remember what moment it was, but there was sort of just cries out and stuff like that. It was very quick. It wasn't a long passage. My mind wanders stupidly.
Well, the way they actually pitched it to us was they said, we're going to market the album as if you were here on opening night, this is what you would have heard. And so we went, okay, fair enough, let's do that. But then, of course, Michael went, well, I want to re-record all of my stuff. And I think Maria Friedman did a little bit. But for the majority of it, like 90% of the album was recorded over, I think, 4 performances. And so it's a combination of the best of those 4.
I love that. I didn't know that. But I mean, like the visceral, the screaming, when Marion hears about her sister and everything, like, I was like, it was so live. It was very live. Yeah, now that I know that, I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense.
See why I'm picturing them stand there in their, tracky dacks and they're just a hoodie or whatever with their books in front of them, and it cries out and just making random noises.
Because the other thing, of course, is it's a performance for a 1,500-seat theatre.
Yeah.
Not for a microphone. And that was our sort of concern at the time, is it going to be too big, But they were like, no, well, this is how we're marketing it. But then, of course, they didn't in the end.
To be fair, though, I have 15,000 thoughts in my head at any given moment. So we're fine on that. Anyways, we're going to move it on. We are running way, way over time because it looks like the woman in white has spilt red wine on her skirt. So we're going to go to an ad break. Dumbest, most unrelated segue I can think of. G'day listeners, Aaron here. While you're topping up your coffees, did you know that you can support our show and go on a fantastically scary adventure at the same time? Go to www.thetonistonTales.com/bookstore to grab your copy of The Toniston Tales, a darkly funny Aussie trilogy about a young boy who rescues injured animals in his spare time and the roller coaster ride he's taken on by a literal fish out of water. Written by me, the village idiot of Thrash and Treasure, you'll come to love Toniston Turnbull and the dozens of wacky characters that he meets along the way. And here is a sneak peek. After barely 3 hours of light sleep, Toniston Turnbull slowly opens his eyes, his body feeling heavier than it ever has before. Not from extra weight, from tiredness and stress. Polly sighs in the shadows behind him, the flame of the nearest barbed wire tiki torch tower having died down, but not out, while Toniston napped. "Are you awake?" Toniston whispers. "Oh, how can I sleep in this place?" Polly moans, turning onto her side and facing Toniston, who stays on his back, imagining obscure animal-esque shapes in the rusted tin roof above them, shadows faintly formed by the nearest dying torches. "We need to work out a way to get out of here," Toniston states the obvious. He whispers despite the fact the nearest shacks to their own are several meters away, and the occupants presumably asleep, as most prisoners seem to be. "How? There's no fence to squeeze through, or even climb," Polly replies, sitting up in bed and then stretching out her sore arms. The hairs stand on end from the slight chill in the air. "I don't know, but I think the whole fighting thing is a distraction." "You mean to distract the other prisoners when new ones arrive?" "No, I think that was just bad timing. Didn't you notice?" Toniston goes on to explain his theory. That fight happened, everybody gathered around. I didn't see one person who wasn't watching, and then when I vomited, the only gate in this place closed shut. What are you trying to say? I think something happened when everyone's back was turned. Like what? Whispers Polly, her voice breaking up in fear. I don't know. That's what we've got to find out. Toniston's brain starts working overtime, but it's strange that nobody seems to want to leave. They seem almost happy. Definitely content. So, when's the next one of those stupid beatdowns? Toniston can't help but think Polly looks tough, almost evil in the shadows as she asks, I don't know, Toniston begins. But both teenagers are distracted by a crumbling noise in the distance. Hopping out of bed, Toniston joins Polly on her own, equally uncomfortable one, spotting a large, white package hovering close to the cave ceiling, behind it a shadowy figure. The package is lowered down, causing the teenagers themselves to lower as well, hoping not to be spotted by whom or what may be operating this obscure crane. Over a long, slow descent, the package is dropped to the ground. Polly keeps her eyes on it, but Toniston looks up immediately, spotting a large black shadow scurry away to God only knows where. Come, he whispers, as he quietly hops off her bed, slipping into his docks with bare feet. Polly follows his lead. Careful to keep watch on all directions, the teenagers swiftly sneak over to the white package, their hearts beating in almost tribal jam in perfect harmony, and stopping in their tracks as the sudden realization of what lies before them sinks in. A woman, seemingly in her early 20s, wrapped up in bandages from the neck down. No, not bandages. Is that spiderweb? Polly asks, completely mortified at the prospect. Grab your copy of The Toniston Tales from thetonistonTales.com/bookstore today. Hooroo! Anyways, we're back with Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, that's Matt, and we are joined by the wonderful Martin Cruz. Now, we had a discussion last week about the sound, quote-unquote sound of Australian musicals. We need to kind of find an identifiable sound with our musicals to stand out from Broadway, from West End, which you can sort of pick the vibe or the sound that you get from them. Could you pick an identifiable sound that you go, that's an Australian musical right away? Like if Hello Dolly comes on, you know right away that's a Broadway musical because it's just got that vibe to it. Or The Woman in White, you know that's a West End musical because it's very sweeping.
I mean, I think that there's no fast track for that. It requires time. But that's the thing, is that we don't have these original Australian musicals that are finding the subsidy and getting on. I just saw The Lovers at the Opera House, which I thought was fabulous, and Fangirls as well. You know, again, these are original Australian musicals which are just excellent.
We've got some great stuff out there, we really do, and stuff that has been popular for a long time that some people may not realize it is Australian, like Paris, musical Paris. That's got an audience around the world, things like that. I don't know personally because I haven't really listened to it. If I was to listen to it, would I know straight away that's an Australian musical? Apart from our industry does, like we said last week, put ourselves second to international, and I think that's a bit of a problem because that's not allowing our artists to flourish. If all our big musicals are based on movies, there are so many original ideas out there. Give us a Jeffrey Edelstein musical. Jeffrey Edelstein, can you not imagine that? Holy shit.
Yes, I can actually.
Huge chandelier and a grand piano in his thing, his big showman. He's a doctor, and then he's got the crime stuff going on. He's got his big boobied wives.
It's a great idea though. And you could almost hear what the music would be as well.
Make it an Australian sound. Done. There we go. Give me my check right now, please, producers. Yeah, so there's going to be an ongoing discussion on this show. It will take time, you're right. I think enough time has passed.
But we had all the was it Terry Clark and Nick Enright?
Yes, the Venetian Twins.
The Venetian Twins.
Yeah. There in Summer Rain, there was like a string of them at that time. And then, I mean, I remember seeing The Republic of Myopia, which Phil Scott wrote the music for, that Tamsin Carroll was in. And again, thinking that was really fun and sort of had a quite unique sound as well, but there wasn't really a follow-up to that. So yeah, it's interesting, and it does take time. And of course, like we've got Eddie Perfect and we've got Tim Minchin and, you know, some who are writing for an overseas audience, but sort of by necessity because there just hasn't been a lot of support for their work work, from like on a government level. Yeah. And so we just need to just keep listening. I mean, Eddie Perfect, like, oh, what a composer, what a performer.
Yeah.
I remember like I had his CD inside Ed's head, which is something that I did, I think, back in his Wappa days. I mean, it's just a unique sound. So I hope that we keep hearing more and more and more.
You mentioned the Venetian Twins, Martin. That's one musical that I would point out and go, that's an Australian musical. And I saw it once.
It's got that sort of the folk songs that, there's a track going back to, an old fashioned shack, all that sort of larrikin, sort of bushy sort of music.
Well, maybe this isn't a good idea then.
Well, but we're trying to move away from that. You know what I mean? We're trying to say we're not just that.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that we need the new generation to be composing in a new voice. When Man from Snow River was all Lee Kernaghan music. But that's, funnily enough, even though it's Australian, it's very much got that American brand of country and western. But then we sang with Australian accents. And I think, moving away from Banjo Patterson, Henry Lawson, kind of dog on the tucker box, colloquial Australians, and getting into this sort of new era, like Muriel's, the stuff that Kate Miller-Heidke wrote for that, that's fresh, new Australian sound there. And I think that's the beginning of what we might soon be identifying as an Australian sound in musical theatre.
Let's start the conversation and keep it going. Anyways, next up, standing ovations. What has been your experience, especially doing Australia and London? Because neither are really known. Well, London nowadays is known for standing ovations, but never used to be. Australians used to be as well cold, but now they're giving it to anything. What's been your experience with them over the years?
Well, I've certainly experienced them.
Yeah. Did you always agree with them?
No, well, funnily enough, the first thing that's come into my head is when I was doing Les Miserables in the West End.
So you're Marius?
I was Marius, yeah, and I'd done the international tour the year prior, which was it was an incredible experience. And then I didn't want to do Les Mis again because I didn't want to tarnish the experience, but I was offered Marius in the West End and I just arrived in London, so I would have been mad to say no.
Mm-hmm.
But particularly towards the end of the week, Friday, Saturday night, we'd get a standing ovation Saturday night, and I'd vehemently disagree.
I love that.
Sit down.
Yes, almost. I mean, like, we don't deserve that tonight. And of course, you can't second guess what the audience has experienced, and neither can you deny them. Someone in that audience may have had their life changed that night, and you absolutely have to go, well, thank the gods of the theatre. But I would be like, really, a lot of the cast were phoning it in that night, and the orchestra were phoning it in. We really don't deserve it.
So I'm a firm believer, when you've done well. When you've nailed it.
Yes.
And when you've nearly quite got there.
When we did Les Mis in Cape Town, someone wrote a card or something that said 74 performances, 74 standing ovations. And they were spontaneous, immediate, the entire audience. Boom!
The energy.
That's the best feeling when you're in an audience or when you're on the stage and that bounce up at the end where no one can just control themselves. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's not a regimental, this is where we stand up now because everyone else is and clap. Really?
Yeah.
No, there's electricity.
And I can't see anymore.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's friends of the cast or fan boys or girls that have been there 20 times already, and they're standing up so that the people behind them can't see, and it's a domino effect.
Yes.
And so the people up in the balconies don't realize that's what's happening, and they just see people standing up and they look at each other and like, oh, do we? I guess we should. Yeah, all right. And we stand up now. And then that cast walks off going, wow, we got a standing ovation tonight. I've got to tweet about that now. And then there's some asshole named me sitting there at home going, no, it doesn't work like that. No, you earn that shit, and when you earn that shit.
Yeah.
I'm such a curmudgeon.
Yeah.
Patty Newton used to come to see the producers, to see Bert, and she used to jump up, at every standing ovation. Then people would be like, oh, it's Patty Newton. We better stand up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's not what happened, but that's what I imagined happened. But good on you, Patty, supporting us every night. We didn't get a lot of standing ovations with that show, sadly. It wasn't a big hit the first time that it came through Australia. Well, the only time.
The only time, yeah.
Yeah. It's done well for production company and then for Altitude Theatre up in Brisbane when we did it. But yeah, no, the original cast, it was very well received. We won Helpmans, and then it was sort of like the audience sort of went, meh.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Shame.
I remember.
I don't know why.
Look at Spam-A-Lot.
Yeah.
That just died in horrible death in front of us all.
Yes.
It was like the knight that has his arms and legs cut off,
I'm
and
not dead yet.
but it wasn't even that, because the show literally just rolled over and died. It did die. It did not fight it at all, and that was a shame. But anyways, now what's a part that you have finished up, but feeling that you left something out at the end of the day? Like you could take that part on again just to reach that pinnacle or that moment that you wanted to.
I did Pal Joey at the Chichester Festival Theatre.
Oh, my dad's from there.
Ah.
Not from the theatre. My dad's from Chichester.
From Chichester.
I think
Beautiful part of the
the
world.
Fishburne, is that near there? Yes. Anyway, sorry. Got excited.
We had 2 goes at it because there are 2 theatres there, and we opened the season in the Minerva Theatre with a 300-seat sort of studio and sold out. And so they asked us back at the end of it in the main house. And I felt like by the end of the main season, I was just starting to come to grips with who Joey actually, because he's a con man and you don't get any help in the script in terms of, you know, in brackets saying this but meaning something else kind of thing.
Context or underlying subtext.
Yes, and it's all written in colloquial language, so you have to work out what he's actually saying. So that's one role that I certainly went, I'd love to have another go at that, because I'd probably do things a little bit. Those days are long gone, of course, but yeah, that's one that came to mind straight away.
Antonio Banderas at 62 years old just played Bobby in Company, and it's his 35th birthday in that. So this whole age thing clearly does not matter anymore. If that's literally almost half his age. Not that there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not going into a theater to see someone's age or someone's real life. I'm literally seeing a lit up box. Give me the fantasy. That's what I'm looking at. That's why I don't watch Grease and go, oh, they're all 35-year-olds. And I'm living in a fantasy. Anyways, now if 10-year-old Martin popped up to say hi, what advice would he have for you? Or what reminder, or what would he tell you off about?
What advice would he have for me? Interesting.
Yes, not the other way around.
Yeah. So I moved to Australia when I was 10 from London. And only in retrospect did I realise not what a harrowing experience, but how challenging it was for me. So from my 10-year-old, I guess, so you could say my 10-year-old self prior to moving to Australia, I might say be proud of your Englishness. Because I lost my accent within 3 months, and I did anything I could to not stand out. You know, because I talked like that when I arrived. I was a little London.
You're a little for Dodger. Sorry, that's so racist.
Yeah.
I'm half British. My dad was born in England. Remember Chichester or
Right.
Fishbone? Anyway, sorry.
I haven't lost my accent yet after 23 years.
Yeah, I was born in Australia and live in Australia. As I told Andrew Lipper, I'm the only one here born incontinent. That's what that means, right?
Took me a while for that one.
Yeah, I did.
Slow burn.
Anyway, sorry. So mine would be telling me to eat your fucking vegetables, for crying out loud, you idiot. What would yours be, Matt?
Get swole, bro.
Get swole. Yes, eat your vegetables. Get swole.
I was a very lean kid. I was very athletic, but very lean. And then, and now I wonder what would have happened if I had, got swole. That's a stupid answer.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, no, I wish I'd eaten properly and not been a skinny shit my whole life. Now, Martin, can you impersonate any other celebrities? Ooh.
I used to do Anthony Warlow when I was an usher on the original production of Phantom of the Opera. Obviously, I can't quite get his singing voice, but I'll give you a little rendition now of what I used to do, which is this idiosyncratic part of his performance. He would go, "That fate which condemns me to wallow in blood has also denied me the joys of the flesh."
Flash.
Have you done that in front of him?
No.
No?
I think Warlow would think that's funny.
Well, I hope he hears this episode. Then I
Yeah.
highly doubt he's going to hear this episode, but fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'm very impressed. I love that.
Yeah, me too. Anyways, Resident Evil. Have you since attempted to play the game, or are you still wussing out?
No, I did. I played the game finally when I was in LA. It came out a remastered version on the GameCube, and I'd gone over for pilot season, and then there was this massive hiatus with politics had been so intense that the whole industry was kind of reeling for about a month or two after it ended. And I spent a lot of that time playing Resident Evil on the GameCube and was terrified but absolutely blown away by it and by the genius of it and how atmospheric and the paradox of, because I've done all the Tomb Raiders and all of that sort of thing where, you know, you have a 360-degree view with a camera. And the paradox of being a crack commando character, and yet you're walking down a corridor and all of a sudden the camera moves to the other end of the corridor, looking back at you, which means the controls instantly reverse, and you see that there's a zombie walking up behind you, and you're like running into walls and, you know, shooting yourself in the foot. I was absolutely blown away by the, you know, having been through the process of the film, of the genius of what they did with that game.
Yeah, and you know they can't hurt you, right?
Yes.
They are just pixels. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's all right then. As long as we clear that up.
But you can hurt yourself.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can hurt yourself tripping over furniture, bumping into walls,
Yeah.
etc., etc.
Yes, cracking the shits and accidentally hitting yourself in the face with the controller because your legs and all that's gone up in the air. And yes,
Screaming, bleeding from the vocal cords. Yeah.
we have all done it. Gaming.
Dangerous stuff. Yeah.
Gaming is extreme sports, that's for sure. Anyways, I've played one Resident Evil game, which I played on the Wii U when that was still operational. But I remember it being set on a cruise ship, which was pretty much the only reason why I was playing it. And I remember there was one bit where there was a monster behind the thing, and the way it was talking was just really creeping me out. I'm like, nah, man, I'm out. So I don't know which one that was.
Yeah,
but...
that's why I didn't want to play the first one, is because you carry it with you through the day, you know, and you go, oh, maybe I need to look in that room behind the painting or something. You're thinking about it. And I was like, I don't want this in the back of my head.
Horror movies I will deliberately watch by myself in the middle of the night.
Oh, me too.
Then I'll go out and put the rubbish out. Now, I watched
really?
Nope the other night, and there's a scene where the little aliens, or I won't spoil it for anyone, but it's dark and you can just barely see that there is someone there. You know, then gone and put the rubbish out. And I swear to God, there was someone standing on the street corner. When I closed the lid and looked up again, they were gone. And I just piss bolted inside. I'm like, fuck no.
Was it a woman in white?
Yes, could have been the woman in white.
Dun, dun.
No, but that's the thing. I'm not afraid of ghosts. It's people. It's human beings that scare me. Like, we're the freaky ones anyways. Now, speaking of Resident Evil and gaming, if you could turn any musical into a video game, which would you like to play?
For some reason, I'm thinking of Joseph.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Now, why? Like be out in the desert riding camels or something? I don't know.
Yeah, because then the coat could have special powers that you can shoot rainbows at people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could have a Super Mario Brothers sort of feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I immediately went to Phantom of the Opera. Remember that E.T. game on Atari, like way back in the day?
Yes, I've played it. Well, hang on. When I say I've played it, I've tried to play it on emulator. Yes.
So that would be for me. Phantom would be sort of like, you know, like E.T. was back in the Atari days.
Phantom would totally work because there is a Wizard of Oz game, and I've played that, and there's a Grease game on the DS that's more like a dress your character up, and it's like a quote unquote sim without much involved. Now, I would love to see Wicked because you could expand off that. You're playing as the Wicked Witch there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the sick morbid side of me wants to play as Sweeney Todd.
Yes.
That would be epic.
Would that not be epic? And you've got to collect bodies to make pies, and therefore you've got to make enough money to keep your shop open.
Yeah.
So it's part simulator, part slasher game. Holy shit. I'm giving producers so many ideas today. Why aren't I rich? Why? Oh my goodness gracious me.
That would be awesome.
Would that not be awesome?
I can fully see that.
You could expand off that mythology from the Penny Dreadfuls, that world, and have other characters. You Jack the Ripper come in. It could be Sweeney Todd versus Jack the Ripper. Things like that. And it's your job. You could play as Mrs. Lovett as well. 2-player. Oh my God. Multiplayer. And you've got to try to catch Jack the Ripper and turn him into a ripping pie. Oh, yum. Anyways, we're going to move on from that. Now, Matt, do you have any questions?
Oh
Come on, show business.
You always do this to me. You always do this to me.
Quicker than that.
Okay. Do you watch The Muppet Show? And if you do watch The Muppet Show, which character would you be, Martin Cruz?
I'm moving more and more towards Stettler and Waldorf these days.
Yes. Sorry, I totally relate.
Personality-wise, you mean?
Yeah, got it. I think aren't we all really?
I was going to say put yourself as a main character, but I mean, I guess they are main characters.
Yeah. I do identify very much with Kermit.
Aww.
Some what the hell's going on kind of thing.
Yeah. Arms above your head, waving wild.
Yeah, trying to sort of manage the madness. Yeah.
During the introductions, Matt's seen me do it a couple of times. You notice my arms are waving all over the place. I am literally being a Muppet at that time when I am doing it. That's who I am thinking of is Kermit the Frog. And he does that. The introduction, and he wears some, yeah! And he does that.
Yeah.
That's what I am doing with the introductions.
Vocal impersonation just there.
I sort of can. You know, the theme song to Punky Brewster? I like singing it as Kermit the Frog. Let's see if I can do it. Every time I turn around, I see the girl that turns my world around. That's off the cuff, okay? That's
excellent.
Without practice.
That's so good.
That's excellent.
Give me a fucking break. But I love Punky Brewster and I love Kermit the Frog, so why not join the two of them together?
Totally. Inspired.
No reason. This is why I need a boyfriend. Anyways, you have been an amazing guest. Thank you so much, Martin. It has been absolutely wonderful having you on the show. When Resident Evil came out, and I'd seen Hair already, obviously, and I saw your name in the credits. I'm like, holy shit, how does this guy from Hair at the production company end up in this fucking movie? So I had no connection to Resident Evil at all or anything like that, but I only watched it to watch your character get killed off. Sorry about that.
Right at the last minute.
Yeah, I was rooting for you though. I was.
Thank you.
You were the Aussie. So no, I was so rapt about that because I've spoken about it on the show before. People like Jamie Blanks, who was this unknown director, went to Hollywood and made Urban Legend, and I still have the freaking one sheet. You know, people like that, Robert Luketic, filmmakers, actors. Back then, it was you had to get an invitation to go to Hollywood. Now you need 2 months on fucking Home and Away or 50,000 followers on Instagram, and you're going to Hollywood on your own volition. It never used to be like that.
No.
And so when someone from here broke in Hollywood, it was a big deal. It was a big deal for little kids like me.
I remember watching LA Confidential. I was in London, and that scene where Russell Crowe and Guy Pearce burst through the door, where, you know, they both decide to work together. And I was just beaming with pride. Come on, Aussie. I just couldn't believe it. This movie with all these amazing people, and here were these two guys, these two Australians, like taking the reins. It was just because that's what it was like back then. It was much harder to make your mark. Yeah,
that's it. You had to literally get invited. It wasn't just you pack up and I'm going to try to make it in Hollywood. No, that's for Americans to do.
Yeah,
that's for someone in bloody Idaho to move to LA to become a star.
Yeah,
it wasn't for us here. And then Muriel's Wedding hit obviously, and Priscilla hit, and we had Nicole Kidman. That was huge. That era, it sort of made the world pay attention, or made Hollywood pay attention to us. And then,
well, Anthony LaPaglia actually became American. Like, he changed his accent and everything. That's what he had to do, or that's what he perceived he had to do to actually make it there. That kind of disguise his Australianism and play as one of them.
That's it. And obviously we know what happened with Mel Gibson, but he was already one of them, Americans. So that's
he kind
fine.
of was. Yeah.
You can keep him. But Nicole is ours because she's ours. Full stop.
Yeah.
Anyways, firstly, before we let you go, where can people find you on the social media?
I'm at Martin Cruz on Instagram. I think I'm the same on Twitter.
Martin doesn't need social media. Just go to any theater and he will be starring in the show. Not
true, but thank you.
Yes, and starring in Mamma Mia coming up, which is my favorite slut-shaming musical. But anyways, that's it from us, and you can find Matt and his podcast at The Story Chunder and at Matt Young Actor on Twitter and Instagram. Find us at Thrash and Treasure or at Thrash and Treasure Podcast, or if you're stupid enough than me, at As Aware. Don't know why you'd want to. Anyways, buy the Toniston Tales, read the Toniston Tales. Let me know how shit they were, because, I wrote them. Please just buy them. It will help our show stay on air, because it is very costly to run. But anyways, that's it from us. You take care, and we shall see you next time. Uro.
Thank you, guys. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Awesome.
Have a great time with Mama.
Like Quicksand!